We live in a fast-paced and hectic world where it's easy to feel overwhelmed, stressed, and out of control. How do you manage all the competing pressures without losing sense of yourself? How do you stay focused enough to not only plot a path, but follow it? Welcome to Recovery Road, a show that offers inspiration, insight, and intelligence, as well as success stories from many walks of life that can show you how you can control your own destiny. Our knowledgeable and entertaining hosts and their guests give practical advice that you can use every day on your road to recovery. Now, here are your hosts, Leaha Mattinson and Greg Bird.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Master Your Life, the show of insight, intelligence, and inspiration, where we ask you each episode to consider who is it you are right now and who is it you would most like to be? What kind of life are you trying to create? What kind of human being are you trying to become? And could you use a little tweak? Because most of us would say, heck yes.
Heck yeah.
Heck yes. Heck yes. I'm joined as usual by my wonderful co-host, Greg Bird. Greg, how are you today?
Amazing, Ashley, in the words of my son, Gavin Gregory Bird. So looking at the snow outside. So welcome listeners all around the world. I know we got some of our greatest fans, Yuga in India and the crew there, the UK, the US. To friends in Canada, we're enjoying a snowstorm right here in good old Edmonton, Alberta for our first little kickoff to spring. But so happy today to have my good friend, Neil Campbell, with us here today. Gosh, we met only a few weeks ago on this corporate connections call and just said, I was just so inspired by your story, Neil. I'm like, you got to meet Leaha. And man, we had a 2-hour chat the other day. We just went, wow, like we had goosebumps the whole time. So Neil, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me. And what I thought would be maybe 15 to 20 minutes turned into, I think, over an hour. And if it wasn't for Gavin to cut us off making sloppy joes, we probably would have talked a lot longer. So, awesome to meet you. And I appreciate you reaching out and allowing me to maybe inspire some people, share my story for those that are looking to be inspired, to be helped.
Well, and this show is all about inspiration, intelligence, and really that insight. And we always like to start the show with a meme of the day. And this one was from another special guest we had on that survived 2 bouts of cancer. She had breast cancer. She fought that off and then got the diagnosis not that long after of colorectal cancer and beat that and just got married 2 weeks ago. And we had her a guest on the show only a few weeks ago. So this is Teresa Llewellyn, who is now Teresa Wright. So hi, Teresa, I know you're listening. This quote is from you. So Neil, what we do every week is we look through all the garbage on social media and we always like the inspiring ones. So we teach people, try to be uplifted and really unfollow the crap that's not enhancing you. So why are you doing it? Why are you reading it? This is one that she posted and she's always in the top 2 or 3 that we have. So here it is. This is a quote actually from Dennis Waitley. It says, happiness cannot be traveled to, owned, earned, worn, or consumed. Happiness is the spiritual experience of living every minute with love, grace, and gratitude.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So we're grateful and full of gratitude for having you sitting in the hot seat today.
Oh, no, I appreciate that. Now it's getting warm now.
So all joking aside, I was really excited. I said, this is the interview I've probably been waiting to do all my life when I thought about it. Because I've been working in and with people who have been dealing with sexual abuse and sexual abuse stories for 4 decades. It's been a very long time. And, we're here hoping to inspire people to have a better life. And so I want people to just really be mindful about how you think about sexual abuse and how you think about how you protect not only yourself, but your children and other children who are in your life. Because it's a sad state to say that 4 decades later, we've still got to be talking about this stuff and so much, coming out to the light. But here we are. And, it's an opportunity for us to all redeem ourselves. So thank you so much, Neil, for coming to talk about your story. And maybe you can just dive right in.
Yeah, sure. No, once again, thanks for having me. And I love this conversation, the way it starts at 40 years later, we're still talking about it. And we're barely scratching the surface of the extent of the abuse and the trickle-down effects. So I was sexually abused at the age of 9. by a trusted neighbor. My day was like any other day. I walked down 3 houses to hang out with my friend, and he wasn't home. And so when I went to walk away, his older brother said, "Hey, I want to show you something." So I said, "Sure." I'm 9 years old. We're going to get in some trouble. We're going to have some fun, right? Unfortunately, that's where he raped me in the shed for the first time. And that lasted over the span of a year. And the trauma for me was so significant that I blocked it out till I was 12 years old. And I know that's hard for people to understand, because how do you block something like that out? Many people don't understand the human mind and the human body and what it'll do to survive. And there's the 3 things you do: is you fight, flight, or freeze. And I froze. And my body froze, my mind froze. And then when he was done doing it, he did. He just kind of pushed me out of the shed like a piece of garbage, and I went home. And that went over the span of a year. I'm not going to be able to tell you how many times, because maybe it's in there somewhere in the back of my mind, but I haven't been able to get there yet. But I know that it was at least a half dozen. So yeah, so that obviously affected my life significantly. I woke up one day, I was triggered by something. I was reading a comic book. I'm a little bit of a comic book nerd, and something triggered it. So I told my parents, and they believed me, thankfully. And we approached him with the police. And the police at that point, he admitted his guilt, which was very important. And we were going to press charges, but they said, "You probably shouldn't." And as I say, and most of the times I talk, is that was 1982. So it's a different world. There's things were not accepted, especially, how would I explain if I didn't like it? Why did I go back? They don't understand the control that the predator has over the person. They don't. We know more of that now, but back then. So my parents decided not to press charges, and the police said it would save me from being teased and being called names that we don't use these days. So that started me on a very, very dark path of alcohol abuse, treating myself badly, 3 suicide attempts. And yeah, it was just until 2017 when I went public with my story. I've been through treatment centers, counselors, and nothing really seemed to work until I found a couple really great places and one person.
So the 4th thing that we do, we have mentioned this on this show before, but when you're abused or when you're under stress of any kind, is fight, flight, freeze, or dissociate. And I think a lot of people dissociate when they've been sexually abused or are going through trauma. Well, I know it, not I think it. I know a lot of people do that exact thing. They dissociate, and that's a coping mechanism of the brain in order to survive through really horrendous circumstances.
Yeah, and I think
it's a high-level coping skill.
And I think we're talking hovering. I think we talked about that before, and that's what I did. It was an out-of-body experience for me. As soon as I knew something was wrong, this wasn't right, and it was distancing and hovering, and it's hard to explain to anybody. But you're not there, but you're there. You're just so traumatized that you go to a different place. So yeah, I definitely experienced that each and every time.
So for me, it's
probably sorry, Greg.
I was just going to say, for me, it's just bone chilling to hear, because then I went to hear the statistic, and I didn't know this until just weeks ago, that it's 1 in every 3 girls and 1 in every 6 boys. And you would argue, you said, that it's actually more prevalent in boys than what's actually brought out. Would that be a fair assessment?
Yes, most stats say that it's 1 in 3 girls, and I would say that number is probably wrong too. And I truly believe it's more than 1 in 6 boys and men. There's such shame and stigma stuck to this that there's so many people that don't want to talk about it, that they're the shame. It's the shame that they carry, that it's our fault. For me, I know what mine was, is that I wasn't strong enough and I should have fought back. And, it took many years of counseling to realize some things are very simple. And the fact that, Neil, you were probably 85 pounds and he was 45 pounds heavier than you. So how could you fight back? But I blame myself for that. And that's the shame that I carried. Everybody else's is different, but you're right. I truly believe there's more people out there that just are still carrying that shame and don't know how to get it off their shoulders for different reasons.
And I think also just knowing those numbers, also I think that the coping mechanisms are really similar. So there's a lot of people who actually know exactly what you're talking about.
100%.
And so that's comforting, is to go, there's a lot of people that know. And you know what? It's comforting, but it's not, because it's so sad, right? It's going, man, why does that actually have to be a collective culture or cult experience? That this is very bizarre when you think about it, that we've come to accept that 1 in 6 or 3 or 1 in 10, like one of anything. Why would a society accept that one child would have that experience and that would be okay? It's sad that it's all become this statistic. And I'd said to you when we were doing the pre-interview, if that was my grandson, if my grandchildren were lined up and somebody said, we're going to just take one of them and rape them, is that okay with you? Because that's actually what we're doing by saying it's okay for 1 in 3 or 1 in 5 to be harmed this way. And we as a society permission this. So yes, that was my little rant. And so for everyone to know, that would be a hell no, that's not okay with me. And there would be a lot of repercussion for somebody who was thinking along that lines. So
I'm thinking today, if somebody's listening, like we always have the attitude, if one person is listening that can just, oh my God, I'm not the only person this has happened to, because you shared that with us. That was your thoughts, your feelings, Neil. There was a professional athlete, a hockey player that inspired you after you read his book. And if you want to share who that is and how it just kind of like was a turning point for you.
Yeah. So for me, and it's, I'm getting goosebumps. This drives me nuts, but yeah. So I was at a turning point in my life. I was going dark again. I was doing okay. I wasn't dealing with all these things in my mind. I was suicidal, and I knew Theo Fleury's story, but I was too scared to pick up the book. And I don't know if I shared this in our first interview, but I was scared because he's an athlete, right? And he's awesome, but he's a great athlete, right? This guy is strong. He's got it. He's fought through all this stuff. And what if I read this book and I don't like what I read? Where am I going to go with it? And that was nerve-wracking for me. It was terrifying. But then I thought to myself, and I have no idea why I thought this. It's like, well, if he can do it, why can't I? Right? So I picked up his book, and within the first 4 pages, I had this feeling of, I'm not alone anymore. I'm not. Because that's whether you're female or male, that's one of the biggest hurdles, is that you feel alone. So when I read that, there was this, I could breathe. Okay, I'm not just this strange person, the one person that this happens to. It's happened to other people. To your point, Leah, is that it's sad that it happens to a lot of people, but I found comfort in the fact that I'm not alone, because the loneliness is dreadful. And when I read that, and I read through that book, he played a massive part in saving my life. He played a very big part in my journey of healing, and he is the biggest inspiration in my life, other than family. And for him, I thought, you know what, for what he did, why can't I just do that? Why can't I just get rid of this shame? It wasn't my fault. And I think that was probably the biggest message I took out of the book. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. You didn't ask for this. You didn't deserve it. So let's shed that. Let's get rid of it. And that's easier said than done, 100%. So yeah, Theo Fleury, yeah, he's the guy.
Yeah, he's the guy. So I've been very involved in the whole sexual abuse, trying to get things changed in terms of the, charter not being changed in 1994 about sexual orientation. Like, there's a bigger initiative behind all the sex abuse that happens to children that I think a lot of people don't want to recognize or realize, that it's just not the neighborhood creep that's doing this, to kids, and that the outcome really is long lasting. You had several years where you felt kind of checked out as a parent. Do you want to talk about that a little bit? Just, and not so much to dip into the pain of it, but just how much you have overcome and what the positive effect has been on your family.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I want to be, the goal of this conversation for me is to bring hope, right? This isn't doom and gloom, but it's got to be a true and raw story. And the fact that, yeah, there were years I checked out with alcohol. I didn't have a very good relationship with my daughters for a few years. But when I came to the point of making that choice, and I think I made the bad reference to the Green Mile, you got to get busy living or get busy dying. I wanted to get busy living. So I went to the Sexual Assault Center of Edmonton and got some help there. And yeah, so for the parents, and I'm trying to dissect the question. I think it's two parts. Is, yeah, they are there. They're uncles, they're cousins, they're your trusted neighbors. They're people that, you'd never know, but you have to go with your gut feeling and the fact that some things aren't right. And I think I touched on another neighbor of ours that had groomed young boys for years. And the one that assaulted me was groomed by him. So, but yes, on a positive note, when I fought through the fog of trying to hide in the pain and run away from it, it was what I was doing. I wasn't strong enough. I was scared to confront it. And when I finally came out and just said, I'm done hiding, both my daughters, and my wife, our relationships have just been so much better. Now, that doesn't mean they're perfect. I don't want to ever say that. There's still some days where it's like, you know what? Yeah, I'm struggling a bit, but I get to manage that and I don't let something else control it. There's no control over it other than me. And I say, you know what? I'm just having a down day, but I always bounce back 3 times because I see the more positive things that out of all of this. And that can be for anybody. I'm not Theo Fleury. I'm just some guy walking down the street that it's happened to. And I think that's important, that because most of us are just regular people that aren't famous and don't know how to deal with it. And we walk alone. But sadly, to your point, Leah, is that you're actually not walking alone. There's other people around you that we just don't know how to talk to each other about it, especially men. So
there was a quote you said, Neil, and I just, I love how you tell your story. And even up until today, what you've done is you did say, and I quote you, I believe the fear is what holds people back.
It is. It's the shame and the fear. And, for me, I was mad. So I went public in 2017 and I was mad. The Me Too movement was out, and which was great. I mean, it was needed, but I never heard much about men. And I knew in my heart that it was happening to boys. I knew it. Mm-hmm. So I sat down in front of my computer. I'm a bit of an emotional person, and I just started typing. Mm-hmm. And I typed my story out and I sent it to everybody in the media that I could. And Andrea Ross from CBC picked it up, and it went public on a Sunday. And I just said, I'm not afraid anymore. I got to get rid of the shame. And it wasn't my fault. It goes back to that and the fear. there shouldn't be anything to be afraid of because it wasn't your fault. You did nothing wrong.
Mhm.
And that's so important to not only hear, but to truly understand. Because I remember hearing it 100 times from counselors. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. But until you actually listen and get that it's truly not, that's a big barrier.
Mhm. So what else made you flip that switch to accepting that it wasn't your fault? Because maybe that would be a good tool for.
Yeah. I thought back about it. I think part of it was, the simple physicality of it all.
Mhm.
I beat myself up for years saying, well, you should have fought back. Well, Neil, you were 80 pounds wet and he's 135 pounds. What were you going to do?
Mhm.
And lots of just internal conversations and really thinking it through. But that took cognitive therapy for me to go through. I had to go and actually talk. And I have to say this because I think this is important too, is that these things that I'm talking about, you had to go to cognitive therapy, they sound daunting and, oh God, you had to do all this stuff. All this stuff it's a journey of healing in the fact that it'll get you to a point where it's not your fault. My brain was twisted 180 degrees when it happened to me. I was in a couple of very high positions at work. And I would literally think to myself, well, this guy's just hired me. I reported to a VP of a very large retail company.
Mhm.
And I would go to work every day saying, oh, he's just got me doing this job because he can pay me less. Because I felt less than anything. That's how my brain worked. Because when I was used in that shed, my self-worth was taken away.
Mhm.
So that carried through my entire life. Like I did well. I have no idea how,
Mhm.
but I did. And I think it's important that people, when they hear this, is that there is work. It is work to take care of yourself. I don't want to ever say to fix it because there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you. This was something that happened that changed you. And I think you said earlier, Leah, is that there's a pattern of people that when they're abused, they're sexually abused, they abuse different things. And it's true. And I find comfort in that, in the fact that because you feel so lonely, oh, I'm this loser that's only doing this. No, we're all dealing with it the same way, but at different levels. And I'm not sure if that answered the question, but
Yeah, and I think there's another thing for people to understand is that when a child is raped, it's different than an adult being raped. And the difference is that you're messing with a child's kundalini or their spirit. It's a spiritual attack. And so it's not the same as healing from a rape when you're an adult. And they're very, very different consequences. That's why it's so imperative that people understand the damage that's done, because it's spiritually damaging to children, where they are cut off from the maker. That's how it feels, is that you are isolated and alone. And up until that moment, you're intact. Like you're la-di-da, my life is good. I'm divine and connected to divine, whatever you want to call it, the great artwork in the sky. I don't care what your frame of reference for it is. But when a child is raped or sodomized, either girl or a boy, it's an attack of the root chakra. It's an attack of the root. It's an attack of the creative part of us. That 𝑗ing qi is where we started. Our belly button, our umbilical cord, all of that sexual energy is in our lower anatomy. And so when somebody sodomizes or rapes a child, it is an absolute theft of the kundalini or spirit of that child. And people need to understand how significant that is, because it's not the same thing as just saying no in the backseat of a car. And it's not the same thing as the adult version of things. So this is why it's so important for people to not minimize the damage that's done to children. That's why we actually have laws about when an appropriate age of sexual consent is. That people are, kind of got their nose out of joint about, that it's the age of consent is whatever it is here in Alberta now. But in other countries, the age of consent is much lower, and lots of people are harmed through these kind of permissive things. So that may be a tangent, but people just need to understand that it's a very significant attack, that it's not something it's easy to get over. It's more, would you say that you noticed other kids who'd maybe gone through that experience when you were a young person, or would you say that you were just completely closed off to it, Neil?
No, I was closed off. Yeah. I mean, I was, when you started talking, like when I left that shed, I was dead. Like Neil Campbell didn't exist. I enjoyed, sorry, that's our landline. Nobody has a landline.
What's a landline, my kids would say?
Yeah. Let me just Google, quiet Google.
Alexa.
yeah, we don't even have that. like the Flintstones over here. But, I died that day. I died that day. I did. And it was hard in the fact that I was a fun-loving little kid, right? Like I just loved to fish. I loved to do these things. And, it's very interesting to me. So when I went public, I used to spend summers out at this farm, and it was great. I had 8 cousins on this farm, and my parents would let me go to this Riley. It's a small town, not a farm, but a small town just outside of Camrose. And it was 8 girls, and I was the only boy there. Right. So it was great. We could curl his hair. We could do all this stuff. Right. They used to take me down for milkshakes at this cheesy old motel at the end. It was great. Best times of my life. Best times. I still remember them. And then that happened to me. And I was at a family reunion probably about 4 years ago. And one of my cousins that was there now knows my story. And she goes, Neil, I'll never forget. She said, you know what? You were there that one summer, and you were just you being a brat, trying to do stuff that boys do. And when you came back, she said, you were a zombie. You were dead. She said, you weren't even the same little boy. And that's hard to talk about, because when you know that somebody else knows that you've died inside, that's hard to hear. It's hard to hear. When you talk about these things that happen and what they take away from us, it's horrible. It really is. But there's a way back, and that's okay too. For these young kids that are robbed of their innocence and robbed of their dreams, they go to bed at night fearing, which is what I couldn't sleep. I would wake up afraid. I feel for them, which is why I'm doing what I'm doing right now, because I want to be I hope to be somebody that I needed when I was 9.
There is a way, and you're a true testament, Neil, to this, and why I'm such a believer in synchronicity. And we used this word when we met the very day, because you said about the nightmares, like you went to bed where you couldn't sleep, and then when you did sleep, the nightmares would just haunt you, right? A lot of the reason you shared with us that you turned to drinking. But Leaha also shared a nightmare with me only months ago when we first started this show together, and she said there's a reoccurring nightmare since I was a little girl. And it was so moving to me to hear this nightmare, because I believe it isn't a nightmare. I believe Leaha was on a mission, a very distinct mission, to save those children, because she describes this same dream, right? Correct me if I get it wrong, but I think I've got a pretty good picture, because you told me the picture, is that she goes down deep into the pits of hell, and behind this door, she knows the children are there. They're hiding, they're scared, they're living in fear. And Leaha's had this mission, why children are so important to her, especially why we're having this today and why it's so symbolic, is she just needs the power, the community, the people, the support to open that door and bring the kids out. And I believe what's been called in my heart has been to collaborate, to build community. And those 2 words came up in that same conversation without me saying it in that Corporate Connections meeting, Neil. So when you said it, and there was Michael on the line that said it, there was one other gentleman, Kent, that said it, I'm like, it was goosebumps that whole call. And I'm like, there's something here. I need Neil to meet Leaha, Leaha to meet Neil. We had that 2.5-hour conversation till we got treated with sloppy joe. Sorry, we didn't have any left over. Yes. But I tell you, when you shared the story just now in front of the whole audience that's listening today and the millions that are going to listen to this broadcast into the future, is you said one guy, one sports celebrity helped change your life to help start that journey in the right direction, bring you where you are today. You, my friend, are that same person, that same hero, that's amazing Spider-Man that's going to take people now to the whole next level and make a difference in their life. I believe and I declare it, Neil. And I thank you to no end for coming on this show and having the bravery to share your story again and again and again. And God knows I only tried to get Theo Fleury here today. I did.
That wouldn't have been good. I can't do that.
I did.
I'd be a mess. I'd be a mess.
There is an interesting synchronicity to that as well, because Leah, your best friend, you got to share this.
Yes, for many years. Glennis Falloon, who's like Pat Falloon's cousin, and they all grew up in the same area, same small town. And Pat played, of course, hockey with Theron, and they all, would have taken swimming lessons from Glennis when they were wee before they played hockey and all those good shenanigans. So the whole hockey connection's pretty funny and synchronistic. Yes. Also because I'm from Viking, and we're both from Viking, and all the Sutter guys are from there who also have a connection to Theo, and helping him. One of them was pretty significant in trying to help him in his recovery also. So there's a lot of good people on the planet. Really trying.
Yeah, there is, and that's I think that's really important to remember too, right? I mean, we're talking about a really dark subject, and that's the reality, but there's also so much more good out there. But I think we sometimes can't reach for that good because we're afraid of showing our weakness and saying I'm struggling. And I think we all want to help. I always tell the story, when I first started counseling, I was like, hey, guys don't talk, okay, Greg, hey, let's go for some chicken wings and have a couple beers. And oh yeah, by the way, I was raped when I was 9. This stuff doesn't typically happen, but it's changing, right? I believe it's changing, that it's okay to, as a male, to just say, hey man, I'm really struggling. And it's hard for the reception and the person. It's a hard conversation to have. But I think doing these things, like you're doing right now, it's going to push us forward, right? I think I said this, we want to run, but we're probably going to have to crawl for a bit until we get there. But this is a great start. Whether it's me, whether it's anybody, it's, there should be no shame in saying that, hey, I just like to talk. Some stuff's bothering me, and it doesn't have to be sexual abuse. It could be anything. And I've always said in any conversation I've had, I can't tell any survivor of sexual abuse what to do. I will never say that this has got me from here to there, because I'm still working on it. I've still got work to do, less. But the one thing I will always say, no matter what, is that talking will help. It will help.
Yeah, and you shared a little bit of in your journey. You've actually volunteered a lot of your time, and again, awesome that you're doing that, because you went to a ranch, you had said, and you saw this one particular boy that was reminded you of you in that moment going back. And then when you had the conversation, I want you to share a little bit about the aha moment he had and you had, and how that could have changed his life from that moment there, Neil. That was a really nice story that gave us goosebumps when we heard it.
Yeah, well, I'm getting them now again. So I was lucky enough to be asked to go to the Little Warriors Be Brave Ranch. So with the lockdown, they aren't able to take some of the kids out to do social activities and such like that. So there were 3 boys there, roughly around the age 14, and I got to walk in and introduce myself and play a couple games. And right off the hop, there was this one boy, and he would tell inappropriate jokes. He kind of had a smart mouth, and I was like, I know who that guy is. That's me. That's me at 14. So I just thought to myself, what would I need at that age, right? What would work, right? So I didn't do much for the first 3 visits, because I just wanted to build a little bit of trust. And I could tell he was kind of thinking I was an okay guy, and we were sitting playing cards. And I think I joked, they call it 500, but old people call it gin rummy, I think is what I said.
My kids would say that.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, we were sitting there playing cards by ourselves, and I could sense he wanted to talk. And I just said to him, I said, you know, you can talk to me about anything, because he knew I was there because I had been sexually assaulted. And when I said, you know, you can ask me anything, he said, about what? And I said, about my abuse. And I cannot put into words this boy that was just always joking, not making a lot of eye contact, to look at me directly in the face, and just so vulnerable, his eyebrows raised, and he said, how did you cope? And just, how'd you cope, like that? And I just talked, and we talked, and I told him what I did, and you know, how I mistreated myself, but I emphasized that it wasn't my fault and it's not his. And sadly, I didn't get to spend a lot more time with him. It was only a couple of weeks. But this kid who didn't want anything to do with me grabbed me before I left, and he gave me a hug, and I gave him a hug, and I said, you'll be all right. You'll be all right. To see that and to feel that was amazing. And I don't know if I shared this, but I did have one of the boys from the ranch. I gave them all my business card. I gave them all my personal number and said, I'll be there for you anytime. And I've actually had one of them reach out and just say, hey, I'm checking in, and which is awesome. So yeah, that one thing, right, Craig? The one thing. And you never know, right? And he may never reach out to me, but maybe he's okay just by hearing that, right? Because we'll never know how many people we reach. And I think we talked about this. I could wait for phone calls, but you know what? You just never know. And
As long as you help one person, and it's so funny. So Glennis Falloon, we'll do a Glennis story. I hope she listens to this and shares it a lot. So we met in Provost, Alberta, when I was the youth counselor for the school division there, and she was the district home economist. So this is a while ago, because there isn't even DHEs anymore. But I was the counselor for the school division, and so I was getting all these disclosures of sexual abuse. So that was in 1991. And there was a lot. Then I had one little girl that disclosed who was in kindergarten. And it was just it's so heartbreaking to watch, you know, families not really know how to cope, systems not really support, justice systems not really being just, and that part of the equation we've got to get better at. But one of the things I was really encouraged by was another one of my students who had been sexually abused by her stepfather. Well, I was invited to her wedding about 10 years ago. So this is flash forward, you know, many years. And she, you know, we're still connected on Facebook. And she would just say, like, I don't know how I'd have survived without you and Glennis taking care of me, being my friend, you know, having my back. There was nobody to talk to about any of this stuff. And certainly my peers didn't understand what was, you know, going on or my experience. And so the long lasting effect really can be incredible. And I know that she would say that she's a better human being as a result of having had somebody listen to her. I went to court with her more than one occasion, you know, with and against this offender. And I've done that throughout a span of time. So for other people as well, there's other, you know, family things that are yet to be told in our family as well that can't be disclosed. But predators have definitely influenced my life directly and multi-generational. So I think, and so to speaking to this, why people need to talk about it is because it is so prevalent that until we start talking about it, we can't start helping other people to head it off at the pass. And one of the things that you had said when we were chatting pre-interview is that you've been at a barbecue or something with a friend, and maybe they were talking about that some neighborhood wanted to maybe be getting together. What was that story again?
Yeah, I was at, we've got a place, we keep our trailer out at a lake all year round. I call it a poor man's cabin. And we were at a barbecue, and this is before I actually went public, and this was a really big turning point for me too. So there was this father. He was a single father with a boy, and I think he was probably about 7 or 8 at that point.
Yeah.
And I just walked into this conversation, and he was saying that, this guy behind us keeps wanting to hang out with my son. I'm like, oh, well, he hangs out with his boys. Like, no, he doesn't have a son. He's just wants to hang out with him. And I just was like, whoa. And I don't know why or where the strength came from to just say, I'm not going to let this happen. I said, okay, that's how it happened to me. I said, this person wants to hang around with your son and he's got no children. That's a huge red flag. And when it came out of my mouth, the words that this happened to me, this is how I was raped, there was this, it probably seemed forever, but it was probably 2 seconds. I was like, holy shit. Pardon my French, but I was like, I just said what I said. And he looked at me once again, really? And I'm like, yeah. And we talked. And it wasn't this, it goes back to that shame piece, right? Mm-hmm. Like, what would I expected, the disgust, the disdain, the push away, you're damaged, you're garbage. I didn't get that. I got the complete opposite. Okay, thank you so much. And then everything just kind of, once again, a weight, it's not one weight. I think it's many weights that we carry as survivors in different moments, right? Who do we trust? Who can we talk to? And the fear of that shame. So yeah, that was a major turning point for me, especially in the community that we had at the lake, because that conversation just doesn't happen and people don't talk about it, right? He told somebody that I told them in a manner of, I respect what he told me. So very powerful, yeah.
So part of this thing, and we were having coffee around the kitchen table at home, and my sister Julie was talking about as a day home, like just, do your research, do your back checks. That was happening. We had another conversation. We need more good Samaritans out there calling it out when they see it. There was a local mall here in the city where my 17-year-old niece, who's a fashion model, very beautiful girl, was walking around the mall, and she got separated from the herd, away from her mom. And there was a good Samaritan that said, there's gentlemen following her around. You better do something about this now, and just pointed out, we need more people out there, I believe, to be not so naive, but be the good Samaritan when you see it happening, because it's happening so much. And we said the number 2 problem in the whole entire world is
child trafficking. Human trafficking is
number
2. Number 2, business. So it's not a problem, it is a business.
Yeah, and I think we touched on that last time we talked, and yes. I'm not too involved in the child trafficking thing, but I think we talked about speaking out, right? And being that person that, well, that guy's acting a little weird or this and that, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that goes back to the fear of, okay, well, what if he's not? Okay, well, what if he is? Mm-hmm. How many times in our day or in our lives have we heard, go with your gut feeling? Mm-hmm. And if you don't go with your gut feeling and you choose to say no, or I'm going to avoid it, or ignore it, I don't even have the words to say it, because you're probably right. It happens, and you have to we put our heads in the sand, I think, a bit, right? And I'm sure there's much more articulate way to say it, but we try to run away from things and put our heads in the sand, because if it's not there, it's not happening. But it is happening. Mm-hmm. And there are bad people in this beautiful world. This is a beautiful world. It is. But there are bad people, and you have to be aware of the fact that if you see something like that happening, you have to do something. It's your responsibility. Mm-hmm. It is. I mean, I could have walked away from that and just said, okay, well, yeah, you know what? But in my heart, in my mind, I knew, okay, all he told me, what he was doing, it wasn't just one day. It was over days. Over days, he would keep coming over. Okay, come on. Like, we can't be this stupid. We can't be this naive. And we can't turn our backs on this, because it's getting too big. It's getting too much. And you think about the lives that are changed, the families. We talked about the trickle down effects, the collateral damage it's massive. It's massive. You know, relationships are broken within families, and children are dying because of something that they didn't ask for. And what are we going to do? Say, well, yeah, no, it's not happening in this neighborhood. It's happening everywhere. And I'm sorry to say that, it's true. And we have to just open our eyes and say, okay, yeah, neighborhood watches. Do we need to do that? I don't know. Get to know your neighbors. Sure. Maybe. Just say hello, have a handshake. You don't have to be best friends. You don't have to have dinner all the time. But when your gut goes off that something's wrong, then you have to act on it. You have to act on it. And I think that's maybe my rant. Sorry.
No, I think that's not
well
not
said.
around. I think that we're supposed to be protecting our offspring. Any, it's like natural response to a threat to your offspring should be to pop someone right in the kisser. But instead we use our logical mind and actually, romance ourselves into some fantasy that everybody is safe. I did that too, Neil. So pot kettle, but it's a good time for us to grow up and get our sanity back. It's more important now than ever to be sane. And so sadly, we have to have places like the Little Warriors Ranch and Little Warriors, though, because we need to still have places like that at this time for people who are trying to heal and to get better. I want to give Greg a little maybe opportunity to talk about planned giving as well, or you guys to talk about it, because it's so important. People are looking at, who do I support? How do I help people? There's preventative measures to protect families, but there's also the post care, and how do you contribute to these places that really need help?
So there's another story of synchronicity here, because you think of last year, all the charities out there that didn't have government funding, Neil, we talked about this, they were suffering. Every special event, even the ones that I used to do, the Jump Rope for Heart, the Big Bike for Heart and Stroke, all those got canceled because of COVID. All those lifeblood of donation dollars stopped, and they weren't replaced. In fact, then even more damage was done because all the people lost their jobs, or a lot of them, of those charities. So here we're talking again around the dinner table the other day, and I'm like, this is so weird that Little Warriors comes up once, it comes up twice, it comes up thrice. And I said, one of the people I know, one of my top advisors in my whole entire brokerage firm, I say his name, Ben Fortier. And Leah's like, my Ben? And she's like, my first cousin Ben. You're talking about Ben. I'm like, yeah, he's connected to this other advisor, Jane Trentini and 𝑸𝒖𝒂𝒃𝒍𝒆 Associates. They have a whole thing in their practice about planned giving, which is about taking these high net worth families, uber net worth corporations, and how to reduce their tax down to zero. So the whole thing is, why would you want to pay income tax when you can support a big cause that's going to say thank you and change the world if you really get behind it? So my plea to everyone listening is that there's charities out there like this that are screaming for your support, screaming for your donations. And you can actually do a little bit of financial planning with philanthropic financial advisors like Ben, like Jane. So we're bringing Ben on the show next week to talk about, how do you do this? How do you actually eliminate your tax upon your death? And if you're in a married situation, you're the husband and wife, once they've both passed, how can you support a charity with these millions and tens of millions of dollars in some estates that we see and what they do in planning, and give to these charities? It's a phenomenal way of planning, and why not do it? So we're going to talk about exactly how you do it. How do you support these charities that you truly believe in and get behind? And I think it can be life-changing. Neil, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, 100%. Little Warriors, of course, gets no money from the government. Zero. It's all based on just people reaching out, and, we ask. I'm the chair of the resource committee there. Just put in that position a few months ago, so I'm finding my footing.
Congratulations.
Yeah, and to see the passion that these people have to knock on doors and bang down walls and say, hey, we need this. It's not for us, it's for them. For Little Warriors, it costs on average $25,000 per child to go through the treatment program. So that includes their on-site, their food, their the clothing, everything. And, you know, to my 2 weeks there, couldn't have been a more eye-opening experience in the fact that how this beautiful piece of land is still open without any money from the government is astounding, and mind-blowing. It was incredible. So yeah, I mean, Little Warriors, they need funding, for sure. What that looks like moving forward, I don't know. We know that like I said, every child's $25,000. They have 4 cabins, but they don't have funding enough to bring the kids in. Their kids, they have a wait list up to 3 years. 3 years. And put that into perspective, I had to wait 8 months to get into counseling at the sexual assault center as an adult. 37 years old. Can you imagine being a 14-year-old child, a 9-year-old girl, and you do not know how to cope with this? And they're saying, you know what? We'll get to you in 3 years. We want to help you. We'd love to help you. We can help you. But we don't have one thing: money. All that money that's out there, all of it. There's not enough. I don't buy it. So I would ask if anybody could, however you want to donate, just donate. They need day-to-day. I go out and get the day-to-day stuff, soap and towels and things like this, but they need big ticket items. I did a Christmas drive. I got them essentially needed items like vacuums. Like if you think about running a fishing camp for a year, think about that. What does it take to run that fishing camp? And I'm only thinking fishing because I went fishing this weekend.
Nice.
But my point is that they need everything. And right now, what they need is the 2 biggest things they need is they need somebody to come out there and fix the concrete in the parking lot, because it's rippled out. It needs major repair. And the other thing that they need is a minivan, a 6-passenger van that they take kids to and from the airport. They take them to activities. They drive them around. They take them. So in the winter, they don't allow the kids to walk typically because of the snow and the ice. They drive them from cabin to cabin. So it's an essential need. And I was there to see it. So yeah. And you know what a better cause. I've seen it. I've lived it. I could have been a little warrior. It wasn't there for me. My first visit there, I don't think I shared this with you, is I went there and I didn't expect to get a tour. And I did. I got a tour of everything. They have a toy room where when you get there, you go in this beautiful little room, you crawl through this little cubby, and it's like Santa Claus's workshop. You get to pick a toy and you get to pick a blanket. And I always remember leaving there and I dropped something. I was crying. I fell apart in my truck. I was like, I'm driving out. I'm like, God, what are you doing? And then it came to me is that, you know what a blessing this place is. What a blessing to have a place where I could sit down and play cards with this young man that's 14. That all he wants to do is connect. All he wants to do is know he'll be all right. That's all he wants. That's all he deserves, to be all right and to have a place where he can heal. And they do such great work. If I could get everybody in there, I would be a tour guide all day long. Spiritual ground for me. It's beautiful.
Well, today, Neil, I thank you for just asking, because I believe and declare you shall receive everything from the concrete to the van, you name it. There's somebody listening right now that wants to make a difference, if not millions that want to make a difference. You watch that happen over this next couple of weeks. And with Ben coming on the show, we're going to do a little special segment to really help fund everything you just described.
Well, I appreciate that. And, these children deserve it. They really do. If you want to, there's lots of people, and I've thought about this myself. What are we going to leave behind? How do we make a difference? What better way to make a difference than to save a child from the darkness, right? To let them dream again, to go to bed at night and go, oh, I can't wait to think about doing this, rather than thinking about what I had to think about and getting up and going, okay, How am I going to lie to myself in the morning? How am I going to survive tomorrow with this horrible gift? So yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful thing that's out there that you can make a change. And I think I said it, and I don't know where I go. We can, we are, and we will make a change.
Yes, we can, we are, and we will. And for anyone who's in doubt of just how serious this issue is, I want to invite you all to check out 𝑝edoempire.org. And you can actually get an education about the problem, not only in Canada, Alberta, but worldwide, globally, and just the roots of where things have all begun. Because I do think some people really do believe that this doesn't happen. But when you get an understanding of the scale of it, and that we can just do our little part to really put the foundation under children and to help them to feel righted in the world. If that's the one thing that you can do in this lifetime and get it right, then you can go to your grave feeling pretty satisfied with that. But get educated, 𝑝edoempire.org. Greg?
I can't thank you enough, Neil, for coming on, sharing a bit of your story with the stage here today. I truly believe that there is well over 1 million, if not 2 million people listening, and this will go on in perpetuity on YouTube, onto Leaha's website, which we're just revamping. And, I just want to share with the audience before we close, is we always close with a song of the day. And I always say a little prayer on the way over to the studio. What song do I need to share the lyrics of? And I don't know why this one popped in until I really started reading the lyrics now. And it's, I'm a fan of classic rock. I'll admit it. I've admitted it once, twice, 3 times on the show.
But you don't have a landline.
But I don't have a landline. But
I'm never going to live that one down.
But my kids, they love classic rock. Thanks to me, thanks to my father. So this one's from Tom Petty. And I thought this was the angel of Tom Petty reaching out to me with goosebumps all over as I read these lyrics. So are you ready for this one?
Ready.
I Won't Back Down. We know this song. We've all heard it if we listen to rock and roll. So here it is by Tom Petty. Well, I won't back down. No, I won't back down. You can stand me up at the gates of hell, but I won't back down. No, I'll stand my ground, won't be turned around, and I'll keep this world from dragging me down. Gonna stand my ground, and I won't back down. Hey, baby, there ain't no easy way out. I won't back down. Hey, I will stand my ground, and I won't back down. Well, I know what's right. I got just one life in a world that keeps on pushing me around, but I'll stand my ground, and I won't back down. I won't back down. Hey, I will stand my ground. By Tom Petty. I won't back down.
That's perfect.
Sounds like you, Neil. So we're going to put all of your information in our show notes so people can reach out to you directly, donate, get in touch with Little Warriors. Thank you again so much for being our guest. Greg, thank you so much for being awesome as always. Yes. And we just invite everyone to love yourselves, love each other, mind your mind. That's all for us. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being a part of our program today. Master Your Life is a presentation of Leaha Mattinson Enterprises, Inc. Join us next time on Master Your Life, helping you to discover the very best of you.